"Get that thing out of my pool." The scream cut through the warm afternoon air like a siren, sharp and furious. Heads turned. Laughter stopped. My heart froze. I was standing at the shallow end of our community pool, helping my 10-year-old daughter Mia adjust herself into her brand new waterproof wheelchair. She had been counting down the days to this moment, excited to experience the simple joy of swimming, something that most kids take for granted. This wasn't just another pool visit. This was her first real taste of independence since her diagnosis with spinal muscular atrophy, and we'd saved for months just to afford the adaptive equipment that made this possible. Her joy was palpable, her smile wide, her spirit glowing in the sunlight, until it was all shattered in a heartbeat. Mrs. Jenkins stormed toward us like a thundercloud, her eyes narrowed and lips curled in disgust. She didn't see a child embracing freedom. She saw a problem, an inconvenience, something to be removed. "Excuse me," I said, stepping in front of Mia. "My daughter has every right to be here." Jenkins barely looked at me. Her finger jabbed toward the floating chair. "That equipment isn't allowed. Pool rules, no exceptions." Mia's face fell. Her excitement drained away, replaced by shame. She tried to make herself smaller, curling her shoulders, her voice barely audible. "Dad, maybe we should just go." Not this time. We had lived in the shadows too long, tiptoeing around people's ignorance. This was a public pool, funded by HOA fees we paid like everyone else. "This is medical equipment," I said calmly. "It's protected under the ADA." But she wasn't interested in laws or rights. "I am the HOA," she snapped, "and I make the rules." I could feel the tension building around us. Other families watched, whispering. No one stepped in. Some gathered their children and walked away, as if Mia's presence was a threat, a danger. The stares pierced deeper than any words. Jenkins loomed closer, casting a shadow over us, her voice rising. "Either that thing comes out, or I'm calling security." "It's not a thing, it's her mobility device," I said, the anger in my chest tightening. Mia looked up at me, eyes glistening. She had already lost so much. Her ability to walk, her mother to cancer, her sense of safety in this world. This pool was supposed to be her escape, her joy. I stood my ground, refusing to move. That's when Mrs. Jenkins did something unthinkable. Without warning, she reached down and grabbed the handles of Mia's chair. "Don't touch her!" I yelled, wading through the water toward her. "Stop!" But she wasn't listening. She yanked the chair hard, trying to drag it toward the steps. Mia screamed, high, sharp, and terrified. Her hands gripped the armrests, knuckles white with fear. The water splashed violently around her, waves sloshing over the edges of the chair. Then it happened. The sound I'll never forget. A horrible, wet crack as her fingers were crushed between the wheelchair's metal frame and the pool's concrete edge. The entire world stopped. Mia's scream tore through the air, louder than anything I'd ever heard. A sound of pure, unfiltered agony that seemed to split the sky in two. Blood bloomed in the water around her, a red cloud that sent nearby children scrambling back. I lunged forward, heart racing, panic clouding my senses. I grabbed the chair and tried to lift it gently, to relieve the pressure. But it was too late. Her hand hung limp, fingers mangled and twisted in unnatural directions. Jenkins stepped back, her face suddenly pale. She shouldn't have had her hand there, she muttered, almost defensively. "This is why we have rules." I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit something. But my daughter was trembling, her lips blue, her face drained of color. "Someone call 911, I shouted to the stunned onlookers. A few finally moved. One ran for the first aid kit, another pulled out their phone. Jenkins stood back, still clutching hers, murmuring excuses. "I was just enforcing the rules," she repeated, trying to justify what she'd done. As if rules mattered more than a child's hand. As if her authority somehow made it okay. The paramedics arrived quickly, but the damage had already been done. The EMT's face tightened as he examined Mia's hand. "These are severe breaks," he told me quietly. "She needs immediate surgery." As they lifted her into the ambulance, her tears still flowing, her body shaking, my heart broke all over again. I held her uninjured hand and whispered soothing words I didn't even believe. And just when I thought the nightmare couldn't get worse, it did. A police cruiser pulled up. Officer Reynolds stepped out. He listened as I explained everything. How Jenkins grabbed the chair, how Mia's fingers got crushed. Then she approached, calm and composed, spinning her story like a practiced politician. "That's false," she said smoothly. "I was enforcing pool regulations. Equipment isn't allowed in the water. It's clearly posted." Her voice was steady. Mine was shaking. "She yanked my daughter's chair while she was sitting in it," I shouted. The officer raised a hand. "Sir, please calm down." I looked around for someone, anyone, to back me up. But most of the bystanders found sudden interest in their phones, their towels, the concrete beneath their feet. All silent, all complicit. One elderly man stepped forward, voice trembling. "I saw what happened," he began. But Jenkins cut him off with a venomous smile. "Edward, your eyesight isn't what it used to be, is it?" And just like that, he deflated and stepped back. Another voice silenced. I wanted to stay, to fight, but Mia needed me. She was in shock. The officer waved me on. "Go with her, we'll investigate." As I climbed into the ambulance, Jenkins' voice rang out behind me. "Steve, I didn't recognize you with the sunglasses. How are Martha and the kids?" My stomach dropped. She knew the officer. She knew everyone. And that's when I realized we weren't just fighting one cruel woman. We were up against an entire system that protected her. And my daughter, broken and bleeding, was the one paying the price. I sat in the hospital hallway, elbows on my knees, hands trembling. The walls were sterile, the air too cold, and the scent of antiseptic clung to everything. Mia was in surgery. They had taken her in immediately, her hand wrapped in blood-soaked gauze, her tiny fingers crushed beyond recognition. The surgeon's words echoed in my mind. Compound fractures, bone density concerns due to her SMA, risk of permanent damage. I couldn't think straight. I'd already spoken with Officer Reynolds, who scribbled in his notebook without looking me in the eye. But nothing he said offered comfort. "It appears to be an unfortunate accident," he'd told me. An accident? How could grabbing a wheelchair with a child in it and dragging it across concrete be an accident? How could the crushing of her fingers against the pool's edge be anything but assault? But even as I argued, he remained distant, guarded. When I pressed, demanding to know who else had spoken up, he simply said, "Multiple witnesses," and refused to name a single one. Then my phone rang. It was my boss. No greeting, no concern. Just a sharp, angry voice asking, "What the hell happened at the pool?" Confused, I stammered through a few sentences, trying to explain that Mia had been injured. But he wasn't listening. "Harold Jenkins called me," he said, his tone ice cold. "Told me you threatened his wife, caused a public scene, that you damaged the community." I tried to interrupt. "That's not what happened. His wife grabbed my daughter's chair and doesn't matter," he snapped. "Harold Jenkins owns Jenkins Development. They're about to sign a $40 million contract with us. You think I'm going to risk that over a neighborhood spat?" My blood ran cold. "My daughter's hand is shattered," I whispered. "She's 10 years old. She was attacked." There was silence on the line, then the final blow. "You're fired, Mark, effective immediately. Jenkins made it clear, either you go or they walk. I have shareholders to answer to. The call ended. Just like that. My job, my stability, my insurance. All gone. My world was unraveling. I leaned against the wall, stunned, trying not to break completely. But then I remembered something. A small spark of hope. The teenagers at the pool. They had been setting up a phone on a tripod near the shallow end before everything went wrong. They had been filming themselves, probably for some silly video or challenge. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and posted a desperate message to the community group. I didn't expect anything. But within the hour, a message pinged through. "Hey, I'm Tyler. I think we caught everything. That lady was horrible. We've got backups saved. We want to help." Tears welled in my eyes. I barely remembered typing a reply, but I gave him my number. Within minutes, I had the video on my phone, and it was exactly what I hoped for. Every word, every movement, every scream. It was all there. Later that night, a woman walked into Mia's recovery room with a determined stride and a stack of files in her arms. Her name was Elena Cortez, a disability rights attorney, fierce, focused, and unshakably compassionate. Tyler had already sent her the footage. She watched it on the way to the hospital. Her eyes, when they met mine, burned with purpose. "This is one of the most egregious violations I've ever seen," she said, sitting beside me. "We're not just going to hold that woman accountable. We're going after the HOA, the police department, and your employer. All of them." I was stunned. "But the Jenkins family, they run this town. Her husband's connected to everyone. The police, the schools, even my company." Elena leaned forward. "Exactly. Which is why we won't let them get away with it." That night, something shifted inside me. The helplessness was still there. The grief too. But now it had a direction. It had fuel. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. Paperwork, statements, court filings, press releases. Elena was relentless. We filed assault charges against Mrs. Jenkins, a civil lawsuit against the HOA for discrimination, and complaints against the local police department for failing to properly investigate. We went after my former employer for wrongful termination and disability-based retaliation. But what truly turned the tide was the video. Once Elena released it during a press conference, the footage went viral. People saw everything. Mrs. Jenkins screaming at a disabled child, yanking the wheelchair, the moment of impact, the scream that followed. It wasn't just news. It was a rallying cry. 3 national disability rights organizations joined our case. Messages of support flooded in. Offers to help. Donations. Legal aid. We were no longer alone. The police department was the first to buckle. Officer Reynolds was quietly suspended, then resigned a few weeks later. My former employer followed suit, likely pressured by bad press and legal threats. They offered to reinstate me with full back pay, damages, and a transfer to a location far from the Jenkins reach. The HOA fought the hardest, hiring high-end attorneys, spinning tales of rule enforcement and public safety. But when 5 more families came forward with similar stories, an elderly couple denied a chairlift, a mother whose autistic son was banned from the playground, their defense crumbled. They had a pattern, and patterns lose in court. The final settlement was enough to cover all of Mia's medical bills, future surgeries, adaptive devices, and a trust fund for her education. But more than money, we won accountability. Mrs. Jenkins was forced to resign from the HOA board. She was charged with assault of a minor with a disability, a protected class in our state, and sentenced to probation and 2,000 hours of community service at a rehabilitation center for disabled children. When the judge handed down the sentence, she claimed it was cruel and unusual. But for the first time, she didn't get to define the rules. A year passed. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened. The wound remained, but so did the strength. We moved to a new home, in a new neighborhood that actually lived up to its promise of accessibility. One afternoon, I sat by the pool while Mia floated nearby, her right hand still healing from multiple surgeries. She had lost some function, yes, but with adaptive tools and fierce determination, she was painting again. "Dad," she called, holding up her waterproof sketchpad. "Look what I made." It was a drawing of a girl in a wheelchair surrounded by water, tiny fish swimming around her, a brilliant rainbow overhead. "It's beautiful," I said, my throat tightening. "What do you want to call it?" She smiled. "Swimming free." That's when I knew. Mrs. Jenkins didn't break her. She didn't break me either. Instead, she awakened something in us both. A fight that burned hotter than fear. A purpose we didn't know we had. Our lawsuit led to real change. The state legislature introduced what's now called the MIA's law, which would require all HOAs to implement ADA-compliant policies and training. Elena used part of the settlement to start a legal defense fund for other families battling discrimination in silence. Our case became more than a personal victory. It became a catalyst, a movement, a warning to every institution that thought they could hide behind rules to justify cruelty. And Mia, my brave, brilliant daughter, she showed the world that even the smallest hands can create the biggest waves.